Deriving the quadratic formula. So, recall that we can complete the square to solve an equation like this. We'll take 9, cut it in half, getting 9 halves, square it, getting 81 fourths, and then add that to both sides of the equation. So, how does that look? X squared plus 9x plus 81 fourths equals 3 over 1 plus 81 fourths is 12 fourths plus 81 fourths, or 93 fourths. So 93 fourths. Now, this is a perfect square trinomial. So we can say that it is x plus 9 halves squared equals 93 fourths. We can take plus or minus the square root of both sides. So that's square root of 93. Square root of 4 is 2. And now the last step is to subtract 9 over 2 from both sides. Now, if this doesn't make sense, there's no chance that the rest of the video is going to make any sense. So go back and relearn completing the square if you have not already done so. So the idea is we're going to do the same process, but now with parameters instead of numbers. Subtract c from both sides. So now we have ax squared plus bx equals negative c. Now, the next step is we need to get rid of a. Divide by a for each spot. So we get x squared plus b over a x equals negative c over a. All right. Now we're ready to complete the square. We're going to take b over a. We'll cut it in half, getting b over 2a. Then we square it, getting b squared over 4a squared, and add that to both sides. Now, this gives us x squared plus b over ax plus b squared over 4a squared equals, we need to multiply this by 4a over 4a, negative 4a over 4a squared plus b squared over 4a squared. These are like terms, or rather the denominators are the same, so we can rewrite them. It makes more sense to put b squared minus 4ac, because of that c, over 4a squared. And this is all a perfect square trinomial based off of that b plus b over 2a. So this is x plus b over 2a squared. Now, the opposite of squaring is square root. So we will take plus or minus the square root of both sides. X plus b over 2a equals plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. The square root of 4 is 2. The square root of a squared is a. Now, the last step is to subtract b over 2a from both sides. And because the denominators are the same, I can just write that in the numerator. X equals, let me fix that. This is important. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That answer is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Again, this is called the quadratic formula. Its purpose is to take in an a, b, and a c and give you out the two because there's plus or minus, the two answers to the equation ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And the formula that you should memorize that is called the quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So when we want to solve using the quadratic formula, what we can do is we can get everything on the same side, subtract 5x and add 4. So this becomes 2x squared minus 5x plus 4 equals 0. Now we can identify a is 2, b is negative 5, c is 4 from the equation. Now we write the quadratic formula. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So now we take in negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, that's supposed to be a 4, all over 2a. So that 2 is this 2 and that 2. That negative 5 is this negative 5 and that negative 5. And c only appears once. Now we have positive 5 plus or minus 25 minus 4 times 2 is 8 times 4 is 32 all over 4, giving us 5 plus or minus the square root of negative 7 over 4. Square root of negative 7 does not exist. Because it does not exist, we will say no solution. There is no solution to this equation. It is impossible to find a value that solves this. And how do we know? X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Another one. Here, a equals 1, b equals negative 1, c equals negative 1. So now we write the quadratic formula. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. 1 plus or minus the square root of negative 1 squared is 1. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4 times negative 1 is positive 4 all over 2. 1 plus or minus the square root of 5 over 2. And that's our answer. There are two answers, 1 plus square root of 5 over 2 and 1 minus the square root of 5 over 2. You could have completed the square to find this, or you could have factored, but factoring wouldn't have worked. So quadratic formula is probably the fastest way of doing this. Note, this one is tricky. It is tempting to say that a equals 2, b equals negative 4, and c equals 3, but that is not true. A is always the coefficient of x squared, b is always the coefficient of x, and c is always the constant. Now we write our quadratic formula. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So 4 plus or minus square root of 16 minus 4 times 3 is 12 times 2 is 24. Ooh, this is negative, so again we're going to have no solution. If we ever get a number underneath the square root, underneath the radical that is negative, we're going to say no solution. Let's do one more just for fun. Let's go with 3x squared minus 18x plus 3 equals 0. So here, a equals 3, b equals negative 18, c equals 3. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So negative 18 plus or minus negative 18 squared minus 4 times 3 all over 2 times 3. So positive 18. 18 times 18 is, I think, 324. Let me just double check. Carry the 6. 8 times 1 is 8, plus 16, 6 is 14. 4, 2, 3. Yep, 324. Minus 9 times 4 is 36. Over 6. Okay, this will have a solution. It'll have two solutions, in fact. Plus or minus. 324 minus 36 is 288 all over 6. 288. 288, taking the square root of that. This is 2 times 144. 144 is a perfect square. It's 12 times 12. So we can say this is 12 square roots of 2 over 6. These numbers are both divisible by 6, or all three of them are divisible by 6. So we can say this is 3 plus or minus the square root of 2. And that's our answer. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. It is the quadratic formula. It's used to solve equations, one variable equations in standard form. Thank you.